So you decided to reuse your foam latex prosthetic, but then you realize that those thin, beautiful edges are gone and it's not as blendable as the first time you applied it. Learning how to deal with horrible edges and patching your foam latex pieces is basically a superpower, plus it can save you money. First, let's talk Bondo. It's a thickened paste made of water-based acrylic glues. Those are gonna be your white color effects glues like Prosaide and Bond. That is mixed with Cabosil, which is a fine powdered version of silica. You know, those tasty looking packets that you find in products to keep the moisture out that say do not eat across them. Yeah, it's the same stuff. This thickened glue is also referred to as Cabopatch and is used to create Bondo transfers. Now, a lot of places definitely overcharge for pre-made Bondo. This stuff is super easy to make and much more affordable if you make it at home. And all you need is a few supplies. When working with Cabosil, you're gonna wanna take your time. This stuff likes to get into the air. Also recommend wearing a mask so you don't breathe any of it in. With the two parts in the cup, I am just carefully folding that Cabosil in, trying to get it coated so it won't go airborne. Once there's no more dry powder, you can start to mix it a little more aggressively and get those lumps out. Now, I don't have a ratio of how much Cabosil and glue I put in. If it gets a little thick, I'll add a little glue. If it's a little thin, add some more Cabosil. I'm going for a kind of thick frosting consistency where it can hold its shape. I'm gonna go ahead and put it into an airtight container. I'm using a mason jar, and as a quick tip, since this mixture is glue, if you use some of the threading and it dries, you might find yourself fighting to get the container back open. So just take a little bit of petroleum jelly and put that along the thread. That's just gonna act as a release and keep it from gunking up your lid. Now let's put some of this to the test. Bondo is a great tool for fixing the edge of a prosthetic that transitions into your skin, a bald cap, or even another prosthetic. I ripped out a nice little chunk just so you can see how much you can really fix with this stuff. Just take your mixture and a spatula, and to the best of your ability, you're gonna smooth it out. You wanna use a spatula to gently scrape Bondo into the low parts and the divots you're trying to fill. You wanna try to keep the same pressure and try not to stop too much because that could leave kind of hesitation lines. But as you go across, that lower gap area should get filled. You can see here that missing gap is all filled in, and there's even that line between the prosthetic and the bald cap that I was able to fill in with some of the paste. And if you're not very good about getting it smooth and not making too much of a mess with the spatula, that's okay. The more you practice, the better you will get at this. But you can also go in and smooth it with a brush and some water. Make sure you're always using water to smooth your Bondo. If you use alcohol, the Bondo will react, seize up, and start to clump on you. The only time you're using alcohol is to clean the glue out of the bristles. Fan brushes are great for this, but you may find that you prefer a different brush. So definitely experiment and see what you like. Pretty much the one thing you want to look for when smoothing the Bondo is a brush with soft bristles. You just want something gentle that you can use in the Bondo that you won't accidentally be leaving raking lines through. And as you are using the brush, you're going to want to dip it back in that water. One, to clean off any of the excess material, and two, just to try to keep the bristles clean. Though if you're working for an extended period of time, you might find that the bristles are starting to stick together and clump and get a little rigid, and now it's leaving texture when you're trying to work. You're gonna just wanna take your brush and clean it with some alcohol. That's gonna break that product buildup down, and that's gonna get your bristles soft again. And if you're gonna go back in with that same brush, just make sure to rinse it with some water so you don't accidentally introduce alcohol to the area you're smoothing and then all of a sudden it's clumping on you. Also, depending on how bad the area is that you're patching, you might need to do a couple passes. Once Bondo dries, it turns clear, but it also does shrink a little. So all you're gonna do is just continue the steps until you're happy with the finished product. Now, sometimes you want texture. Say you have a very texture heavy face that just goes right into a baby smooth bald cap. You can just grab your Bondo and an orange stipple sponge and start stippling in some light texture. If you want even more subtle texture, go ahead and use a red stipple sponge. And if you end up with too many bumps and lumps to your liking, you can go ahead and use water to smooth it out, or even stipple a little bit of Prosaide or Beta Bond over the area just to soften that texture. But what if you need more than just stipple texture? Like, say you're missing a sculpted element out of your prosthetic because you got a little overzealous and you ripped an entire chunk out of it like I did. I was ripping the nose area away so it could fit better, and also getting rid of some extra material around the eye area, and completely ripped a chunk of the eye bag out. So you're gonna start it just like any other patching. Gonna go ahead, get the product in there and try to get it nice and smooth and level. Here you can even see I'm using a different brush because it's just easier to work with in this area. Now in that frown area, I definitely want more product, but for this first layer, I'm just trying to build that spot up before I worry about any actual texture. Now the eye bag, I'm just gonna use a brush dipped in water and start to sculpt those lines in the Bondo to match the prosthetic. Then I'm gonna let it dry, and you can see that those thicker parts are not set yet, but they are firm enough to work over. Just be careful. Now I'm gonna build up more of that frown area, also touch up any other spots. This pass, I did a lot more Bondo because I intend to add that texture. If you're using Bondo to patch around the eyes, it's really best to have your model keep their eyes closed until everything is dried and powdered. This is a very sticky process. And unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of keeping my eyes closed as I work. So if you or your model's eyelid does get stuck, just lightly unstick it and press some powder into it, and then you can get back to work. Now, patching with Bondo can definitely be a little time consuming with applying, drying, and reapplying. And most of the time, you're gonna be using this to correct edges once you've glued the piece down onto somebody. You can even use Bondo to repair stuff ahead of time before you even start to apply. Take these horns, for example. This is definitely something I would prefer to fix before I even start a makeup. That way I can take my time, resculpt it, go over as many times as I need to get it how I want it, and it has adequate time to fully dry. The next thing I'm gonna show you, I definitely do not endorse doing this, but I really wanted to show you how powerful the ability to patch prosthetics really is. Now I found this prosthetic in the clearance bin. I personally love shopping for imperfect and B pieces. When you have the knowledge on how to patch and repair prosthetics, taking a little extra time with your piece is definitely worth that discounted price at times. Well, this one was marked down because it is riddled with steam bubbles. What are steam bubbles? Well, these usually tend to happen with the first run of a mold. You really want your stone molds to be completely dried out. If there's any moisture in there, when the foam latex is baking, it's gonna react to that steam caused by the moisture held in the stone. This creates steam pockets, and it can even cause areas of the sculpture to collapse. Let's get back to it. You can see how there's a thin skin of the sculpture and then that air pocket underneath. And this causes these areas to be delicate, and they can collapse or tear when you apply it, and then it creates an unwanted texture in your makeup. Here you can see a massive air pocket. Okay, so now pushing Bondo to its limit. Let's just hack the crap out of this thing, and you're even really gonna get a better look at how bad those steam pockets are. So now that edge really sucks and would definitely look terrible applied to anybody, right? So let's apply it. Just like this, no preparation, no fixes, just how you see it. Now I should probably explain the big reason why I don't advocate doing something this extreme. It's not that it's dangerous, it's just really not a good idea. Bondo takes a lot longer to dry when it's thick. When making Bondo transfers, you want them to sit out and fully dry depending on the thickness of the sculpt, and that could take days. So what I'm about to do, there is absolutely not enough time for it to fully dry. And that means that area is going to be soft, can easily be squished or dented. We have a large area to rebuild, so going to break out the large spatulas. This definitely feels more like I'm frosting a cupcake than actually patching a prosthetic. Now right now, I am just trying to fill a lot of that area and just make sure that it's smooth and I'm not creating more issues to deal with later. You really want to be careful when you're working with such a large amount of this product because it's super soft and easy to squish. If you ever frosted a cake, you probably know how easy it is to ruin that nice, smooth, even layer. Okay, as you see, it's not perfect, but that's not what we're going for right now. This is just the first layer to get most of that shape in. Now, just gotta wait forever for it to even dry enough for me to work on top of. I gotta say, I don't plan on wearing this into the following day, so I'm just gonna work on some other areas. Oh, and here you can see where one of those steam pockets has ripped when I was applying it, and now you have this weird texture, but that's a super easy fix. Some Bondo and smooth it right out, and we're all good to go. Okay, so the first layer is, well, dry enough. Still guys, be super careful when applying the second layer. Now remember, this stuff is really sticky even when it's dry. And right here, you can see the dry part of my spatula has grabbed onto that sticky first layer and I've pulled it up. And at this point, you really just want to admit defeat and just give up. Or you could take some water and smooth it back out and just continue. That works too. Okay, so back at it, I also ended up resculpting a little ridge area that was missing, just building the basic shape, getting it nice and smooth, and using a brush to add a little bit of that sculpted detail back in. Now it's dry as much as possible. You can see the difference where this side, where I used a more proper amount of Bondo and it's all clear and has dried, versus this monstrosity that's going to take 2-3 days to dry. Once you powder the area, you can really get a better look at your patch job, and you can check if it's all smoothed out. If there's any issues, you can totally go back in with more Bondo. Now I'm going to gently paint this just so you can see some color on there and get a better idea of the blend. Now, along with fixing those edges, I had to do a little trick with the ears because they were not staying stuck to my head no matter what I was doing, much less me being able to blend that into the rest of the makeup. So if you want to know a little trick to deal with unruly pieces like the ears, be sure to click over to the next video and I'll see you there.